Good afternoon from George, South Africa, right here in the Heartland Broadcasting Studios. Sorry, I had to be reminded that we've actually gone live, and I just want to tell you that it's great to be able to share this period of time with you about a number of things that are near and dear and very close to our hearts. And sitting with me on my left-hand side, of course, is my friend Jacques van der Merwe, and he's actually the manager of this place, which we call Heartland Broadcasting. They've got a lot of things that they've got to do during the course of today, including an event just down the road a bit tonight. And thank you for everybody already joining us from all over the place, including my buddy Bob Pulfrey from my Pittsburgh days, and he's there in the state of Illinois in the USA. And thank you for everybody else that is coming together with us this afternoon. This is our last Saturday of 2018, and Jacques,
yeah.
Let's not talk about 2018, or do you want to talk about it?
Do we? 2018 was really a rough year, not only at Heartland, but a lot of people have been saying that 2018 was really a difficult year.
Yeah.
But the one thing that keeps on coming directly after this has been a difficult year is the fact that this was really a year of growth, where God has, sometimes in a very hard and difficult way, expanded your territory, gave us more. Although
More of
it
himself.
might have hurt, but it was good.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, even though it was a difficult year, it's been a great year, but man, am I glad it's gone.
Well, I think we're all looking forward to having a very wonderful year. And by the way, we call this program that we come together every Saturday, Our World Today. And I think there's a word which I want to give before we get into any other topic, because we've got a lot of topics we want to talk about.
Some good stuff.
Yeah, really good material. And some things we need to keep our eyes open to and very alert to, actually. And so let me just start by saying that a few weeks ago, I got a telephone call from a friend of mine, Jacques, which was very interesting. Mm-hmm. And I want to share what my friend Philip, who bears my name, even though he's younger than I am, but he calls himself Philip number 2, and he calls me Philip number 4. Now, his son is also Philip.
Yeah, there's reason for 1, 2, and 3, and 4.
Yeah, and because his dad is in his 90s, and his dad and I met way back in the 1970s. But Philip said something very significant, and he said that 2019 is going to be a year where we begin to look at the parable, or not even the parable, the actual incident of Jesus going out into the sea. And his disciples were out there and couldn't find anything for the longest period of time. No fish anywhere. But he said 2019 is going to be like the story in Luke chapter 5, verses 1 through 11. And it basically illustrates that Jesus gave his instruction. It said, put your nets on the other side of the boat. The necessity for utmost obedience. And if there was a reason why we had all the trials and tribulations and everything that we experienced during the course of this past year, I think it was because we're learning where we're supposed to throw our nets in the right way.
Isn't it like tough love?
It is.
God knows that we need to move in this direction, and it's going to hurt, but it needs to happen.
Well, and I believe that we're sitting in the place where, like the story that happened there in the book of Luke, it actually illustrated that there was a lot of fish that were there, more than could be handled, actually. And they needed another boat to come, and that boat started to sink on the Sea of Galilee. And I think we're coming into that place where a number of things are getting ready to happen, and we just need to be sensitive as to how we need to conduct ourselves at this time.
Yeah.
I think that's really what the message is going forward into 2019. Once again, thank you to everybody that's coming.
We've got Mossel Bay watching. And we've got Wellington watching, Basil and friends.
Oh, way to go.
Hey, we've got somebody from everywhere. And
all over the place.
If we get a good morning, it means somebody from the U.S. as well.
From the U.S. And Cynthia, good to see you joining us. And I did get a message from her a little bit earlier today. So that's exciting. Well, we've got quite a parade of subjects to talk about. One of the things that I get very concerned about is the lack of balance in our world today. You know that. I don't like the imbalances. I don't like the extremes on the right-hand side. I don't like the extremes on the left-hand side. And because they have a tendency to kind of lose common sense.
Yes.
And there's a guy that writes for a publication called Archimex. His name is Dennis Prager. And he wrote this article, which was headlined in this way: I tell you all about the left. And then he goes into part 5, brain versus mind, or why young people today are not wise. That's one of your passions. You've always had a great love for young people. Yes. But listen to what Dennis says. When I talk to young people, I try to offer them what I was offered when I was their age, but is rarely offered today. It's called wisdom. It's called wisdom. And he said, especially on the left, believe that human beings are basically good. And he said, there is no evidence to support it. But he said, Jewish and Christian kids who study the Bible know how morally flawed human nature is by the age of 10 years old. They know that. And then he said, this whole thing, that life is a daily battle between the brain and the mind. The brain wants an ice cream sundae. The mind knows that too many sundaes will make a person overweight and eventually diabetic. Similarly, the brain, especially that of the male, wants sex with anyone it finds attractive, but the mind knows the trouble doing so will likely lead it into
trouble. Big trouble.
Major problems.
Big trouble.
So, having said that, I mean, he talks about this because he said almost every left-wing and right-wing disagreement in American life, and all of life, I should say, can be explained by the brain and the mind conflict. The brain is led by what feels good, the mind by what does good. And leftist positions feel good.
Yep.
Because they're always trying to make an appeal to everybody's feelings.
Yeah, but see, just look at what happens in South Africa as well. How do you win the most votes? You go onto people's emotional state or what they need, their physical need and things. You stimulate that, not the correct way of thinking. You go to their feelings, their physical needs, and then you conquer them with that instead of making a good decision.
Right.
And great decisions are just being thrown out the door because we love a KFC meal. which is great, by the way.
It's good, but you don't want to have too many KFC meals.
No.
There's too many people in this land that have far too many KFC meals because it's deep fat. I mean, let's face it.
But it is good.
Okay.
Okay, let's go.
Well, one of the things Dennis talked about in this article that he published on December the 18th, he said, the Yetzer Yatov, the impulse to do good, and the Yetzer Hara, the impulse to do bad, are two competing impulses. He said, when I was a young man, one of the leading rabbis of the last generation, Rabbi Wolf Kelman, told me something that changed my life. He said this: I have become pretty good at keeping my Yetzer Hara in check. It's my Yetzer Hatov that gets me into trouble.
Okay, that was a mouthful.
I think I've just given you a lesson in Hebrew.
Yeah. There's something before we go on to the next one that I do want to ask you a question about.
Yes.
So I'm being tortured with the book of Job at this stage. And interestingly enough, although most of it so far, and I'm making a confession here, is pretty much gibberish of one man and his friends just going, blah, blah, blah. I'm in pain. It's going so bad. God has left me, wada, wada, and all those kind of things and stuff. And then the part where I'm right now is this young man comes in at the end, which I've never known before, just by the way. It's the first time that I read this.
And speaks such sense.
But first, before he does that, he says to the older chaps, he says, I respect you because you are older. And I have waited that you finish your talking expecting wisdom because of your age.
Yes.
And yet I have found nothing. And now, even though I still do respect you, I want to give my opinion, and I am going to give you a scolding.
And you know what? That younger generation should give us a scolding. When we're walking in kind of like the whole impulse, because most of those comforters of Job were impulse driven. And had all kinds of stupid convictions too.
But it learns us a lot, because in life, isn't that how we react anyways? That's our first reaction. That's almost these two terrible Hebrew phrases that you just read, which I cannot remember or say. That one, Isn't that what Job also had a challenge with? Is that even though he knew better, he still reacted. Are you looking at Heather's message?
I'm looking at Heather and
Hi,
say,
Heather.
Hi, Heather, good to see you. And I see my classmate from the state of Maine, way back in the 1960s, Roger Jewell. I see him as also there. And Roger, it's good to see you. Please give our regards to Gail as well. And let's
continue with this craziness.
The liberal media, talking about the left, right, the liberal media or the leftist media was still unglued in 2018. And this is an article by Brent Bozell III, also with Archimex. And he said, democracy is still vibrant, as we saw with record voter turnout in November, but the wild conspiracy theories about Trump never stop. Some of them qualify as the worst media quotes of the year. And then he goes into some of the statements, like MSNBC's Joe Scarborough, who said children are being marched away to showers, just like the Nazis said they were taking people to the showers and then they never came back. You would think that they would use another trick, because he's talking about those people that came through the border of Mexico and came to the wall and, taking one slight element from out of that. I mean, how desperate is this getting to be?
You know what? We spoke about this, especially when it comes to Israel. A lot of people have got a lot to say about Israel and how evil they are and wada, wada, wada.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of worrying today. But you know what? If you haven't been to Israel, you cannot really say anything. If you haven't experienced it for yourself, you cannot really make a judgment call on it.
Yeah.
And don't you think this is very much the same as well?
Yeah.
We're not on the Mexican border. We're not in those shoes. If we aren't there, how can you really make a judgment call? And this is where the media kind of loses it for me, because they give their opinion. They tell us what they want us to hear and stuff. Yeah. Isn't that where the big problem with this also comes in?
And you see, the whole campaign of disinformation and misinformation.
Yes.
Beloved, can I tell you something straight from my heart? Please hear me. It's time to wake up. We really need to wake up in our generation. We need to stop being so gullible, so naive, that we just believe everything that we see coming from whatever source.
Yeah.
And it's a plea that I make, because we're living in a very, very wicked time, where people want to lead us astray, lead us into the pathway of destruction. And if we're going to follow those instincts on the left and on the right, we're going to be in serious trouble. I mean, even during the course of the last 5 hours, I ran into something about this whole media disinformation kind of a thing. And so, they were comparing the boots, hear this, the boots of Michelle Obama to the boots of Melania Trump.
The boots.
Yes, they were comparing. And the whole one side of the media were saying, oh, but Michelle Obama's boots were just so fantastic. And they were so amazing to observe these thigh-high boots on Michelle Obama while she's doing her book tour. But look at that woman, Melania Trump. I mean, come on, she's an amazing-looking lady.
They've got nothing else to say anymore. They've done everything. They're trying to find... Listen, Trump most probably isn't the most perfect person on the planet.
Oh, make no mistake.
But you get to a point where they don't have anything bad to say about him anymore.
Yeah.
They don't want to agree that he is doing some amazing things that are needed.
Yeah.
He's not perfect. But now you start talking about the ladies' boots.
Boots. Come on, give me a break.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, there's a
Shish
desperate
kebab.
nature. Yeah, I like that word, shish kebab.
Shish kebab.
Okay, I want to tell you thank you for everybody else that's joining us, like Janine and Dion. Good to see you, Dion. Great to have you on board. And listen, by the way, anybody that's watching, please send your remarks because I can't retain anything. Whoever is watching, I mean, I can basically remember who might have been watching, but I have to go and punch the screen in order to wave back at you. But write something, say something on there, and then it's retained, and I can also give a reply once this live streaming time is over with. Well, we could go on and on about that, and all the screaming matches that have come from different people that are. Actually, what they're trying to do is polarize people, and it's time to get our act together. Mm-hmm. I see our friend Dennis has come on board. Dennis. Great to see you. Well, let's go on to another topic here. What about Steven Seagal?
Now we're getting to some interesting chats.
I have to confess.
Bring it.
I have to confess that as much as there's a lot of things that I question about Steven Seagal and some of his tactics and even some of his movies. But at the same time, Steven Seagal has been making some statements recently. And he was talking about how, I'm not going to use the word that he used, but he's talking about Donald Trump is unpopular because he's kind of going after certain people's instincts that are not so nice, and some people don't like it.
Okay,
he's saying.
We're talking about the New World Order.
Yes.
Okay. And he was talking about kicking the New World Order's donkey.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And
in a real Steven Seagal way.
In a real Steven Seagal kind of way. And you know who he did it with? Piers Morgan. On Good Morning Britain. He talked about how they exposed deep state operatives attempting to derail. Hear this, Trump's America First. Hey, folks, America, South Africa, Great Britain, Germany, I don't care who they are. They have to put their nations first. That's number one. And Donald Trump has done that. Yeah. And you see let's talk about New World Order, because when we talked recently about, George H.W. Bush, who passed away. He always talked about, in his speeches, he kept referring to a new world order. And people said, he's part of a big plot to kind of overthrow and take on the whole world and whatever. But every single time, if you checked out what George H.W. Bush was saying, he kept saying, we want a new world order of democratic nations that are duly elected by the people and not dictatorships. That was his concept. Now, there are some other concepts I am absolutely certain about that, about a new world order. Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, every nation, do you agree, must do what they're right, what's right for their nation to do.
Isn't that what government is actually supposed to be?
That's why we elect
for the people.
Yeah, I mean, it's all part of the way life needs to come into collusion. I mean, one of the things he was talking about, I really enjoyed this, because Piers Morgan was trying to tell me, but everybody knows that you have a personal relationship with Vladimir Putin and all that kind of stuff. And
he does?
He did.
Oh, and Steven Seagal or
Steven Seagal. And the same way with Trump. I mean, Trump also knew Putin. But then he said, Piers Morgan was trying to trip him up. And And but then Seagal fired back. Why don't we be really honest here, Piers? Every country is involved in espionage. Every single country. The American spy, the British spy, the Russian spy, they all spy on each other.
It makes for some great movies.
Yeah, of course it does. And he's appeared in some of them himself. I mean, with some of his martial arts. Goodness gracious. I must say, I enjoy watching some of his movies.
Yeah, you talk about him quite a bit. You watch a lot of his movies, actually.
I've seen pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big Seagal fan.
Yeah. Yep, you're right there.
Yeah.
I just will never be able to grow my hair like he does.
Neither will I.
No way. It's not going to happen. All right. So enough about Steven Seagal. Hey, I want to show you something. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a final topic we want to get into. You see this young guy in front of my face? Well, his name is Ben Sasse. You want to say something about him? Because
he's from Nebraska.
Yeah.
What a great state, Nebraska.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because that's where you stay.
I love Nebraska.
Nebraska is called the Cornhusker State. And Ben Sasse is a United States Senator from the state of Nebraska. And he had a lot to say when the recent hearings were happening with the Supreme Court gentleman that is now on the Supreme Court. He had a lot to say there. But at the same time, I like this guy. I like him because not only does he get really brutally honest about people that are creating all kinds of difficulties and division and cranky stuff all over the place, but he really speaks up as a voice of reason, and I like him because he spoke to a lady, Alexandra Hudson, and she's a writer for the Daily Signal.
Okay. Where is that?
In the United States. It's actually a division of the Heritage Foundation.
Okay.
And so yeah, and she's got a kind of like a degree from the London School of Economics as well. Okay. So she's kind of bright. Not kind of, she is bright. And she did an article about Ben Sasse, and here's what she said. All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. And this was spoken by the scientist and the Enlightenment philosopher Blaise Pascal. And then she compared that statement to Ben Sasse. And she said, this was a man ahead of his time. And she also talks about how Ben Sasse is kind of like a guy that seems to be a bit ahead of his time, too. Why? Because he goes after political leaders. He's actually taken on his own president, Donald Trump.
But why?
Because he recognizes that the problems of society are not political. They are much deeper than that. And the reason why we say that is also because Ben Sasse is somebody who loves the Lord God with all of his heart. And one of the things he's done now is to write a book. It's called Them, Why We Hate Each Other and How to Heal. And in it, he talks about recovering our love of community and family if America, and let's call it for South Africa, are going to survive. Okay?
Sorry, I'm smiling. We're getting some great messages on screen here. The challenge is, while we're busy, it just pops on the screen. And so if Tani Marina is actually looking, do you want to go to the nursery after
Yes,
this?
I do want to go to the nursery after this.
Life goes on here in Southern Cape, South Africa, George. Love it.
I wasn't going to say anything, but you cracked up, man. You cracked up. Anyway, now back to Ben Sasse. You know, one of the statements that I liked, he said in this book, he said, we spend more time on the thin relationships on social media than thick relationships face to face.
Yes.
And I think in saying that, he's talking about our dependency upon technology is actually far too great.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to say that crazy thing that everybody says. With great power comes great responsibility.
Yes.
If you like wine, it doesn't mean that's a bad thing. When you start using too much or using it for the wrong reasons, it becomes a bad thing. And I think social media and technology and everything is really awesome, but you have to use it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And the moment when it becomes too more of a focus, I mean, to make a confession, if I would lose my phone, my whole life would be, in trouble.
Yeah.
And see, the thing is, we don't communicate with people anymore. You sit behind your phone, even in a meeting or at a dinner, lunch date. You sit with your phone the whole time.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that real relationships, then it's not really helping much.
Quite frankly, I have had not a love-hate relationship with my phone, even though you are watching this through my phone.
On the phone. And that's why we see all the messages coming through.
That's why it's all
on
there.
Your phone, yes.
And thank you, Gert Niehaus, for joining us. Good to see you.
Welcome.
And P.T. Broth is also a longtime friend, is coming. And who is...
Hannah is actually very interesting family from Wellington.
Okay.
That just joined us today and stuff. They're pretty cool. And
I'm so glad.
Yeah, he's also a very sharp thinker.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see.
Thank you
says
so much.
That's true, huh?
Okay, let's do it.
He agrees, then it's good.
Well, we need to kind of wind up here. So one of the things, can you see what's being written here? It's hard to cultivate friendships and community, and it certainly doesn't happen overnight.
Oh, it doesn't.
We all seek the path of least resistance and fixes that are easy and quick. It's more leisurely to seek community online on our terms and our own time. It's less emotionally risky to numb our loneliness with distractions. Research shows that the brain interprets social rejection similarly to physical pain. And to locate our identity and meaning in the fury of the day rather than something transcendent. Now, this is what this man, Ben Sess, has a very strong conviction about it. By the way, he is also a man, thank you, Leon, for joining us, by the way. But Ben is a man that is gaining a lot of respect. He's young, as you can see on the picture. And I'm making a prediction that if something happens with our president, Mr. Trump, in the next couple of years, a guy like Ben Sass is going to be one of those people that's going to be mentioned either by 2020 or a little bit later as somebody that could easily be able to get up there and be a voice of reason and be a critical person, possibly considering the candidacy for the presidency of the United States. So very interesting.
Can you imagine if you have a leader of a country that, in my terms, that actually thinks fresh?
Yeah.
That really goes for truth and sticks to his guns.
Yeah.
And are really there for the people. What an amazing thing that would that be? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, isn't that the one thing that we see too often? Is where leaders are very much just in it for themselves.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the only reason why they become politicians, the only reason why they come into power, because there's a salary and there is status in this and everything. But and that's maybe why I like Trump that much, because I hear a lot of people saying that he's been creating more job opportunities. Is that true?
Very true.
You see?
Yeah.
So he is actually
and meaningful jobs too.
Yeah, and he's looking out for the people.
Yeah.
Yet he's getting resistance. Why? Why is it? I mean, once again, he's not perfect. None of us are perfect.
No.
But yet this guy is doing something great for America.
Yeah.
He's actually doing what he said he would do.
Yeah.
If you have more leaders like that, that can really make a change and a difference in the world around them.
Yeah.
And like I've seen some of Ben's YouTube broadcasts.
Yes.
I mean, he's to the point, and he asks the right questions.
He does.
And he sticks to his guns, and he's not ashamed to say it. I mean, if you've got politicians actually standing up for what is right and representing the people that he needs to be representing there, instead of just being there because, hey, I've got a nice job, I've got a car, or wada.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, an interesting comment from Albertus Kaiser. Technology certainly makes it easier to show what's really happening in other countries.
Yeah,
and
true.
This is actually happening, and we're able to get this message across through technology, and I appreciate that. Nice to see everybody that's joining us, even Gert.
Albertus is very scared, hoor.
Is it?
I knows him.
Okay, good
He's
stuff.
a very good guy.
All right, it's good. And there's a lot of good people that are watching. And so please, let me say it one more time before we finish up here. Can you do us a favor? Write a note, say what you're thinking, put it down, because we will also discuss it in future, because every Saturday we're going to come and we're trying to work on certain technology to get this place all together and to make it look as slick and professional, but as personal as possible, because we believe in the personal touch.
We'll have to do something about this whole commenting while we're doing the new system.
Yeah.
We'll have to get a big screen where all the comments and stuff comes up that
bring it up there.
You can still see it. Yeah.
Well, on that note, Jacques, thank you for joining today.
It's a
pleasure. And for everybody, please join us again. Tell your people near and far. Let's begin to make this discussion become a viral thing and to do just some awesome stuff. And we need to become proactive in our modern day and age. But guys like Ben Sass, for instance, they're not fearful. They're fearless. And we need to be like that as well. We need to stand up for what we believe in.
And support them.
And really get behind them.
Yeah. I
mean, there's some stuff that's going on and that we need to get behind and support with all that is within us.
We cannot.
By the way, Cynthia's saying she's got to go, and but she says I want to sign up. Good news.
Good news.
She's got to go and exercise. Way to go.
We cannot just say goodbye this time.
No.
Because this is the last time this year that we're going to be saying goodbye.
So we're saying tot ziens.
Happy New Year.
Yes.
Happy New Year. It's 3 days away, except if you're in Australia, New Zealand, then it's a little bit earlier.
A little bit earlier.
Yeah.
And it's so good to share with you. In fact, in Sydney at the moment, it's pretty close to 12:30 in the morning. I didn't know if you knew that. But anyway, we just want to greet you all and thank you for joining us. And please come back to us when we come with our very first program. We promise you it'll be a lively discussion. It'll be godly. It's going to do all kinds of good things. And comments are still coming up. So thank you for doing that, because it means all the world to us.
Yeah.
And on that note, you take care, be blessed, and have a great week further.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
We'll see you guys next year.
Amen and amen.